大怪盗アルセーヌ・ルパンが残した不思議な宝物ルパンコレクションがギャングラーに奪われた。失ったものを取り戻すために戦う怪盗、世界の平和を守るために戦う警察、君はどっちを応援する？
Hello and welcome to LupinRecap vs. PatReview, the podcast that's stirring up a storm. I am your host, Lokomasi, and with me is my lovely co-host, Fefner Masamune.
You'll have to forgive me, but I completely forgot what intro I was going to use. So here's my intro. The joke is I forgot my intro. Okay, we got it. Good. All right, that's another week. That's another intro for the week, guys. We did it.
See, I love meta humor, so this is probably one of the better ones.
Wow, just insult me like that, jeez.
Well, definitely better than last week's. And today we are talking about episode 24 of Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger. But before that, we are going to have a little chat on delaying backstory and how it affects both the character whose backstory is delayed and the narrative as a whole. Now, there's two very broad ways this can go. This can go well, and it can drastically change how you've been viewing a character so far in a story. Like, you've made assumptions about them that turn out to be totally wrong. Or it can be bad, and it just feels like this was never their backstory until you arbitrarily decided to make it their backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a good version of this, it feels like this was planned from the beginning. A bad version of this is just, oh, that's what we're doing this week? That's what you thought of when it came time to write the episode this week? See, the problem with this is that good examples kind of veer into spoiler territory for the most memorable ones.
Yeah.
So spoilers for Nier, that is OG Nier, not Automata. The Nier character that's probably the best example of this is Kaine. She's introduced hating the shades and super violent, and we have no real reason to question why that might be, but then we find out that not only does she have more reason to hate the shades than normal, she also has more reasons to not hate the shades because she knows that the shades are sentient.
Yep.
But they also ruined her life, so it's kind of a wash.
I mean, a lot of things ruined Kaine's life.
A lot of things
so many
happened
things.
to Kaine. A lot of things ruined Kaine's life, including the translation team. But for bad examples, I'm just going to give one example each because otherwise I'll just be here all day. The best bad example I can think of is Kenshiro's backstory in Fist of the North Star. You can tell that they only knew whichever brother was currently being introduced.
Yep.
And they did not plan out any characterization.
And then all of that was thrown out the window in Fist of the North Star 2, the sequel series, in which Kenshiro has a different brother that he's actually the brother of.
Oh boy. Those are such a mess.
Yep.
Honestly, the best part of like all the retellings the story gets is they get to slightly fix those backstory bits. Or at least do things that, should have been in the original scene that weren't.
Mm-hmm.
Like how you can actually see Toki and Rao when Jaggy complains to them, but in the original manga, they're just blank silhouettes for no reasons other than the creators hadn't designed them yet.
Who are these guys? I don't know. Maybe this guy's gonna be kind of beefy, who knows? Not even I, the creator. So, I've not had much time to think of examples myself, and my usual go-to pool of, the usual things. I don't know, I keep thinking of Final Fantasy, but half the time in Final Fantasy, most of those problems are the fact that the characters get their backstory way too early on, and then they're just sort of there for the rest of the game. So it's not quite apt. I feel like there are certain aspects in Final Fantasy VI, or like characters have certain aspects that flash back to decent ways into the game, but I cannot recall that, and you haven't really played or seen Final Fantasy VI anyway, so I don't want to spoil too much there. I guess just broadly, it's best not to reveal too much about a character at a time in situations like Lupin Ranger, where this is going to go on for 50 episodes.
Yeah.
So, you can't just give everything all at once. Or, even if you do give away a lot, like with Kyrie and his relationship to his brother, being able to relate it to other people's stories, as we'll see in this episode, goes a long way. So it's not necessarily just the backstory itself, but how it connects to both things that happen before we see the flashback and how it's used afterwards.
Yeah. I'm going to repeat what you just said about not giving too much backstory at once. Because that's the real problem of any backstory, is when they just sit you down and explain, here's what happened in the past. And at the absolute worst, they just expect you to care about it now. And they don't even make it obvious why you should care about it now.
Alright, baby, it's exposition time.
This show does not do that. The show does a very good job of establishing like a bare minimum of backstory to begin with.
Yep, and they go.
The cops are cops for cop reasons, and the thieves have a bit of their reasons given, but they still hold back a whole lot.
So I think that's about it for that discussion. So
Yep.
I guess it's episode time. Episode 24: A Promise to Return Alive. That's quite the title.
It's the titles you just see and go, oh god damn it.
We open on Kyrie reading something on his phone and wondering where the other two Ganglars went after their fight. Tuma asks him if he's found any clues, but he's had no luck. Even Noelle hasn't figured out where the Ganglars went. We see as we cut to the police HQ, where the cops are also stumped. Despite Noelle's excellent sketches of the Ganglars, there's been no sign of them since the previous encounter. For some reason, they also question Noelle's sketches, but they are perfect likenesses, as he says. Do not doubt Noelle's ability to draw. It's almost as good as his ability to flip. Back at Jure, Umika expresses amazement as a group of girls manage to get concert tickets. Despite their low availability and scalpers otherwise cornering that market, they owe it all to their lucky pendants, which are shaped like leaves, which have given them lots of good luck since they got them. Kyrie suddenly gets an idea and asks the group where they got their pendants. Roll intro. We cut back during the evening as Kyrie enters a nightclub. In the corner, he sees a very suspicious man hand over one of the leaf pendants to a man after receiving a large sum of cash. The customer leaves and suspicious man gives a thumbs up, and a good luck. Kyrie asks if he can get one of the pendants and what the man is using them for, to which suspicious man frowns and plays dumb. But before Kyrie can get any cool pre-battle one-liners, the cops show up as they got a report that the Ganglar is operating the club. Figures they'd be timed like that. The suspicious man stands up and reveals what we knew all along. The DJ was a Potaman! Oh, and as other Potamen rush in, Giwi reveals his true form, with the best sarcastic shrug he can muster.
I feel like if we didn't know this person was specifically Giwi, he might have had one of the better disguises.
Mm-hmm.
Just because everyone's dressed kind of weird because it's a nightclub.
Yeah, but God.
He just has, like, a really, like, a leaf-covered suit.
I do love Giwi's style so much, though.
He is so good. It's, like, insane how consistently good this Ganglar is.
The cops Kaisatsu change and fight the Potamen. Kyrie prepares to transform himself, but Tsukasa comes in out of left field, punching a Potaman, and stops him before he can actually transform. She escorts him out during the action, and the rest of the cops continue the fight. Outside, Kyrie tries to bail, but Tsukasa asks him why he was there. Kyrie shows her the pendant, and she confiscates it since it's from a Ganglar. Tsukasa then mentions that he shouldn't be going around with something so dangerous, because his brother would be sad if something happened to him. Ladies, envies, and gentlemen, Tsukasa said the B word. Or the A word, depending on translation.
Well, I think she says Oni-san, so they translated that as brother.
Kairi is visibly upset and asks how she knows about his Aniki.
I was like visibly upset. Yeah, no shit.
But while Kairi angsts for a bit, we cut back to the club where Giwi is casually walking away. X confronts him and Kaito changes, but Giwi casually throws him off. Then, once X fires, Giwi activates his safe power and the shots pass right by him. Giwi laughs as Ichigo and Nigu also try to hit him, but miss again. Giwi then blasts the ground and escapes in the dust. God, this man is just always rolling at least 3 over what these people are rolling. Just styling on everybody.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned him walking away, and I think that's what he does most of the fight.
Yeah, he just wants to leave.
He's just casually walking out of the shot.
He does not care. Back at Town, Tsukasa reveals that they looked into Kairi and his partners at one point, though she doesn't mention the circumstance that we happen to flash back to, with good reason. She asks him if his brother was the one who raised him, but Kairi doesn't answer, saying that it's an invasion of privacy. Tsukasa apologizes, and Kairi says he'll forgive her if she doesn't give him a hard time no matter what he does. That doesn't fly, of course. Kairi says that between her and Kaichiro, the global police sure are a nosy bunch, to which Tsukasa tells him not to lump her in with Kaichiro.
If you compare me to that son of a bitch one more time, I swear to God.
I love how, she's still friendly with him, but any time anybody tries to compare the two of them, she's like, no. Absolutely not. How dare you? I kind of want to see an episode dedicated to, that. Why does she do that?
I want Keiichiro to be in the same room as Tsukasa when she does that once.
Don't compare me to Kaichiro. Yeah, don't compare Tsukasa to me. That's rude.
No, you're right. That's how it would go.
Eats a snack. She also decides to open up as well and tell Kairi that her parents also died when she was young, and that she was raised and trained by her cop grandpa. We see him throw her around in a dojo because they're training. And because of said harsh training, she started to grow distant from him. Probably because of all the judoing.
Yeah. He's kind of a dick. We only see a brief second, and it starts with, reasonable, monotonous training, and then he just trips her because he's a dick.
You gotta be ready for anything. Including family members playing dirty. If you can suspect me of foul play, no criminal will catch you off guard.
Stop crying, we're going to the park now.
But we then see a scene of Tsukasa as a teen. She and a friend are hassled by some creep who grabs Tsukasa's friend. In response, Tsukasa fucking tosses the dude to the ground, though he does manage to scratch her eyelid. When the cops arrive, the creep tries to tell him that he's the victim, as they stuff him in the back of the car.
So, when we watched this, I listened, and I'm pretty sure you hear, Foley for his arm breaking.
Yeah, there was some very powerful sound there.
And I don't think he scratched her eyelid on purpose. I think he was just trying to stop himself from being hurled to the ground.
Yeah, no, he was flailing.
Fuck him. I'm not saying this in defense of him. I just think that, the only thing he managed to do to hurt Tsukasa wasn't even on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. He sucks. He accidentally nicked her.
And then he gets arrested for having his arm broken.
Good.
You vandalized that wall. That's my blood!
Tsukasa's grandpa rushes in and hugs her, saying that he's glad she's okay. She hugs back, and present Tsukasa tells Kairi that's when she realized her grandpa just wanted to take care of her as her parents would have. I don't know if her parents would have karate'd the hell out of her, but I guess self-defense is important nonetheless. We then see Kairi flashbacking to all the times he was rude to his brother, who was just trying to be there for him.
Yeah, I think the word flashback is super appropriate here, because Tsukasa was reminiscing, Kairi's having a flashback.
Yeah. Now thoroughly guilt-tripped, Kairi asks Tsukasa why she's working such a dangerous job if she has someone worrying for her. She tells him that she just wants to live a peaceful life with her grandfather, but the world has to be a peaceful place for that to happen. And I like this because Kairi calls it an aggressive approach to peace, which is extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
Says the Lupin Ranger. Tsukasa also mentions that she can stay strong because she told him she'd come back to him alive, to which Kairi visibly frowns. It's fine, he's not facing her, so she can't see that reaction.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the main difference between her and Keiichiro, and why she says, "Don't lump me in with Keiichiro."
Mm-hmm.
Keiichiro has made no promises to return back alive to anyone, as we have seen.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's very cautious. But the moment is suddenly interrupted as Tsukasa receives word that Giwi escaped, and the cops need to spread out to find him. Tsukasa leaves and tells Kairi to be careful on his way home. She runs off, and Kairi walks the other way. At some warehouse, Giwi hands over a stack of cash to Zamigo, and Zamigo hands him a sack of something or other. As Zamigo leaves, we see Lyman sitting farther back in the room. He tells him that the only reason Zamigo has the kind of intel he does is that he's disguised as a human pretty much all the time, and he also adds, like he needed to get any uglier. I love the idea that, like, there's no time limit on Ganglar transformations or something like that. They just don't really like being transformed. Makes them feel gross.
Zamigo has an unnatural and unfair advantage because he's a fucking freak by Ganglar standards.
Wow,
Also,
look at me, I'm hot. What the fuck, Zamigo? So, Giwi laughs and mentions how Zamigo has always been Lyman's enemy. But Lyman gets an idea and tells Giwi to continue his plan as he leaves. Giwi laughs again and mutters about the seeds he's sown bearing fruit. The next day, a woman wins a 1,000,000 yen lottery. How nice. Except as that happens, her leaf pendant glows purple, and she's consumed by vines. Noelle and Sakia happen to be nearby, but they can't remove the vines. Noelle mentions that the vines are devouring her life force, and we cut to another man who's suddenly become shrubbery. Keiichiro wonders what the cause could be, but Tsukasa quickly notices the pendant. At Jure, the group is watching the news as it turns out Kairi's hunch was correct, but the situation is more severe than he could have guessed. Kogure is there, and he tells them that after expending all of the pendant's luck power, the user's transformed, and the pendant consumes the wearer for nutrition. If nothing's done soon, the wearers will die. Kogure hands over a list of Giwi's known locations of operation, which is the first time in a while he's visibly given physical intel on a Ganglar. I figure it's just assumed that he does that for the Lupin Rangers most of the time. That's why they're always at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, and I think they mentioned a couple of times that Kogure gave them info.
Yeah. Though there was that one time that the Toothbrush Ganglar was at the dam, and Noelle needed to tell them, and Kogure, you dropped the ball there.
Yeah, that Ganglar was not hiding.
Not in the slightest. There were probably tourists who saw him. At Police HQ, Hilltop is worried about the number of victims, but thankfully, Jim has located Giwi. At the warehouse, Giwi is just giddy about his plan, but he's interrupted by the Phantom Thieves. Not that he's worried. He's just happy he gets to replace humans with greenery. He likes nature, you see. Really into it.
Also, since Kogure gave the Lupin Rangers a list of locations Giwi might be at, I choose to believe this is the 4th or 5th time they've done this intro.
Which is really weird because Jim apparently just found his exact location, and yet they still managed to get there first.
Mm-hmm.
Good job,
well,
cops.
They started earlier.
The thieves Kaito change, and Giwi summons some Podamen. Because the thieves need to do some fighting, and gunfire ain't gonna do a thing to Giwi. The Pat Rangers then run in and see the fight already in progress. X applauds the Lupin Rangers' intel. So they all fight for a bit until Red and Sangu try to take on Giwi. Giwi continues being untouchable, and he even deflects Red's sword strikes. Red and Sangu eventually both go down, and as Giwi wails on Red, he tells them that they're out of luck. He's only in the shot for like a second or two, but he's just fucking going to town with his sword.
It's about time Red got his comeuppance.
Hearing the word luck, Sangu realizes that the pendant she confiscated from Kairi the other night might be able to help. However, she's unsure if she should try it, as the pendants were from Giwi in the first place and they might not work against him. But while Tsukasa isn't one to take stupid risks that could result in her death, Red notices the pendant and is absolutely the kind of dipshit who'd try to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
He steals the pendant right from Sangu's hand and tries firing. Giwi activates his safe power and deflects the bullet, but it flies into a nearby barrel and reflects back into Giwi, which tosses him a mile. Giwi tries to complain, but gets shot. I do appreciate how, like, the moment he starts getting hit, he is absolutely not prepared.
Mm-hmm. Just straight up, oh no, oh god, oh no.
Red continues firing with some of the smuggest poses he can muster, and Sangu notes that he didn't even hesitate despite the danger. Yellow warns Red to stop firing, but he does not. After a few more shots, the pendant activates, and vines begin to grow. Before Giwi can recover, Blue flies in and enters Giwi's safe combination, 1, 9, 2, and grabs his treasure, L'Evasion. Now defenseless, Blue charges in and fires. Meanwhile, X takes out Good Striker, who I guess just lives in Noelle's pocket now. He hands Goody over to Ichigo, and they prepare for their special move. Sangu takes a moment to consider Red's lack of self-preservation, and she goes over to the rest of the group so they can combine into PatRanger Yugo. Blue realizes that he'd better get the hell out of Dodge. And X also prepares his special move. Yugo uses one-hit strike, and X uses Excellent X. Yugo fires the usual beam, while X fires just a circle of frickin' shurikens at Giwi.
You know, the shurikens that cops have.
They're in the shape of an X, it works. Giwi explodes, and everybody covered by his leaves is saved as the leaves disintegrate. Red falls over once he's freed, and both Yellow and Blue go over to him. Yellow to berate him, and Blue to congratulate him. X mentions that Red has fortitude, or perhaps trust. Sangu watches and realizes that Red was willing to gamble his life for the collection, not because he doesn't know how to stop, but because he can't. As always, though, Ghosh can't leave a moment alone, and tells Giwi's safe corpse that Lyman will be lonely without him. She brings Giwi back, and Giwi breaks through the ceiling and into commercials.
And if Lyman isn't bothering you, Giwi, he's gonna start bothering me. I do not need texts at 3 a.m. from that lonely-ass lion.
So, when we return, we just see X activating the X-Train. No real build-up.
Yeah, this show, like, really, I don't know what to call it, takes advantage of commercials by breaking the continuity?
Yeah, but, like, we didn't even see, like, Giwi actually standing at heights before we came back to it. It's just, he's partway through the ceiling, commercial break, X time. It is a little bit jarring. Anyway, the Pat Kaiser also activates, and as they begin firing at Big Giwi, we see Zamigo standing on a roof, seemingly disappointed that it wasn't the Lupin Rangers kicking Giwi's ass. But he's approached by Lyman, who asks Zamigo if he wants to work with him. Before we get to see more of that conversation, though, we find Big Giwi threatening to turn the Pat Rangers into a salad. He also manages to get X-Emperor to stagger, which is kind of impressive. X isn't worried, though, because he just flips Mex and whams Giwi in the face with a sword. The Pat Kaiser uses their normal-ass bullet strike attack, while X uses the X-Emperor slash. Giwi dies in a disappointingly anticlimactic final strike after having accomplished almost nothing in his big battle.
Look, he did so much before becoming big. He used up all of his luck.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Giwi. You just could not style when you were that large. maybe you shouldn't use the pendants, yeah? Maybe you exerted too much of your power.
God, what if that happened? What if he just pulled out a gigantic pendant?
Just throws that at him. Alright, you got like 10 good shots, but then you're dead.
No, he puts it on himself.
Back on the roof, Zamigo mocks Kiwi's death and starts walking to the exit. Lyman asks him to at least consider his offer, but Zamigo just waves, so who knows what he's going to do. Lyman then says that he's not going to let the humans get full of themselves. Back at the Pat Kaiser, the group is celebrating and preparing to leave, as they usually do after a mission, when they suddenly hear a strange noise. Suddenly, Lyman appears behind them. Giant Lyman. As in the size most Ganglars only reach after dying near the end of an episode. Everyone panics in surprise, including X, and Lyman's claw attack tears into both the Pat Kaiser and X-Emperor, knocking both mechs to the ground. Lyman, determined not to let anyone think he's a pushover, launches a volley of missiles, and the Pat Rangers seem to be in serious trouble as the episode ends. I don't think anybody's going to think Lyman's a pushover with an intro like that.
Feels like it's been a while since we've had a good old cliffhanger like this.
It has been a bit, but man, it's fitting for the best trio of Ganglars that Lyman just crashes in at last second. He has such a strong presence, he can't even wait for his own episode to start kicking everyone's ass.
That was the episode.
Yep, sure was.
Pretty good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we normally start by talking about the specific Ganglar, but I do want to just mention this whole team has just been really well established.
Yep.
Like, in the last episode, Kiwi was already both of our favorites, I think.
Yep. Good design, good personality.
Just from design alone. And then he fights and talks a lot more in this episode, and he really stands out as a pretty memorable Ganglar.
Mm-hmm.
But we, like you said, we've not even gotten to Lyman's episode yet, and he's already intimidating as hell.
Yep.
Like, it's really easy for a show as episodic as this to have major villains that don't have much more screen time than the minor villains.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could have easily botched Lyman and just had him show up for one episode, and it's like, oh, well, he's status gold, he's a big deal. But we don't really see any of it. But by spreading him out across these 3 episodes, yeah, he's a big deal, and we believe it. We know he's a big deal even before his actual proper episode.
Yeah, like, not only is status gold a thing that we now know about, but they established that, early enough that's now a threat, but also it gets put at the back of your mind because he's not the target of that episode, except now, 2 episodes later, we don't just have to deal with the fact that he's status gold, he's also giant. So now we have a collection piece, and he's already taken out most of the Rangers in a few strikes. It's pretty good. Honestly, I feel like more of the Ganglars should have had, team-ups. I mean,
yeah.
It works pretty well for JoJo Part 5 if you put the enemies in a group and have them interact with each other a little bit before we actually see them in a fight. We just get more of their personality. And also, seeing villains work in a team is always really cool.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not always work in a team. Sometimes they're bad at that, but that can also be interesting as well. But yeah, I think it would have given presence to a lot of Ganglars who, even if they are going to die in their own episode, are still pretty interesting.
I guess the point of it, though, is that this is like a real battle royale competition.
Yeah, so they're not all going to team up because some of them have different ideas. And let's be honest, who's going to team up with a guy who just makes buildings into statues? Who wants to be his friend? The guy with a toothbrush? What Gangler's going to work with him?
Okay, so statue guy, toothbrush guy, and pitchcock are on a team.
Actually, legitimately, I do kind of want to think about how that would work. It's always fun to see how dynamics work when they're put in a group.
Mm-hmm. See, the way I think about this is that it's basically a controlled gang war.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, factions would naturally arise. So I do wish there were more team-ups, but I do understand why they would rather focus on the individual Ganglars.
So, change of subject, but, like, one thing Bravely Default actually does well is, like, in the game, you see, like, each job-based villain do their own thing and do their own plan through one scenario, but then later on in the game, they actually start teaming up more often, and you just get a bunch of really weird but interesting groups, like that sort of thing. I just wanted to use that as an example.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes weird team-ups are neat.
Yep.
But
anyways, we need to talk about Giwi specifically.
Yeah. Took a while to get to this, but yeah, God, he's just amazing.
Reasons why Giwi rules. Point number 1, Kiwis are really cool and kind of underutilized as an aesthetic. Number 2, his eyes, they are just light bulbs, and that's great.
Yep.
And I can't think of like a third singular reason. I just think that every small detail that's not worth mentioning on its own really comes together for him.
He's so smug. It's so good.
And he's mastered Muso Tensei.
Yep.
It's unfortunate that he didn't charge one of the rangers, and we see like a ghost of Ushibarak behind him.
God.
These movements. Ushibarak. He gets his ass kicked. Wait a minute, and there's a Podemen behind him.
Oh no. Wrong person to channel.
Oh god. That would have been amazing if Kenshiro channeled someone who sucked.
This was a mistake. Also, we joked about it in the episode when we watched it, but God, I really do wish that at the nightclub someone was just like, and this one goes out to our old friend who died recently.
Yeah. Just... I was about to say he plays Raging Bull, but that's a movie, not a song.
He remixes the movie soundtrack on...
Also, speaking of that nightclub, we didn't really talk about the posters.
Oh, yeah.
The only one that is just funny enough to mention on a podcast format is there's one that's just called, like, says, like, Villains Party.
Yep. Just says that right there.
I mean, good name for a band, but also...
You're just going there, alright, what's your gimmick? In a world where some people are actually the Hell Mob in disguise, I feel like I would be a little more wary about that sort of thing.
But another thing about that, the whole nightclub scene and these pendants, I kind of, like, jokingly refer to them as drugs when we watch the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this might be one of the better, like, metaphorical drugs out there in fiction. Because they're an actual metaphor and not just drugs with a different name.
Yeah, it's allegory. You gotta think about it.
Yeah, it's not just, like, a type of drug that doesn't exist so the writers don't have to do research. It's not a type of drug that does exist but doesn't actually act like this because the writers didn't want to do research.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thing that is very similar to a drug while being distinct enough that your mind doesn't immediately go, oh, this is the drug episode.
Yep, but it's a thing you buy at a nightclub, and it makes everything really good for a while until it doesn't, and you die.
And then it kills you.
But you just have to kill the drug dealer, and everybody's drug addiction will go away, and everything's fine.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Yep, that's the law.
Damn it, that's how the law works. Like, given that, I think it's interesting how kind of lax they treat Kairi purchasing it.
Yeah.
Because, like, we, the audience, know that he's just buying it to figure out what the deal is. But Tsukasa doesn't know that, and she doesn't, like, threaten to arrest him or scare him. She just says, I'm going to take this away from you. Don't buy any more. Go home.
Don't make your brother worry about you.
So it's very much a, don't do this, but I'm not going to be a dick. Which I thought was an interesting way to go about that.
Yeah, but let's see. Anything else about Giwi? I mean, I I've mentioned his design so many times, but I love his look. The Plague Doctor thing works for a lot of character designs. Maybe because it's underutilized, but also I love his sword. I know I mentioned that as well, but it's a cool sword.
The spiral sword. So the two characters that we can talk about, Tsukasa and Kairi. Tsukasa has the delayed backstory that we alluded to earlier in this discussion. And I think this is one that works well.
Yeah.
It's a good, middle ground working well, though. It's not like Kaine, which is so noticeable and memorable, but also a gigantic spoiler that you don't want to ruin for other people. I would feel comfortable mentioning Tsukasa without prefacing it with a spoiler warning.
Yeah, because, it's not really a huge thing.
But it does change the way that we see other things about her character. I already mentioned why she doesn't like being compared to Keiichiro. Keiichiro's an idiot, but a specific type of idiot that's going to get himself killed. And Tsukasa is not like that.
Yeah.
But also, she mentioned earlier when she was hired, she put a lot of emphasis on the pay, and we find out that she lives with her retired grandfather, who probably isn't making a whole lot of money.
Yep.
Not that she needed a reason to want good pay, but
Yeah, if you're going to throw yourselves in front of a gangler, then you might as well get paid for it.
Yeah, but it's interesting context for it.
And I also like how it does a really good job of just presenting an overall, comparison with Kairi, because the two have had interactions before, but this is the first time we really sort of go in depth with this sort of thing, and it really shines in how they deal with situations where Tsukasa's really analytical and can figure things out pretty quickly, but also she's going to hesitate because she doesn't want to die. She will not make stupid mistakes. Kairi, on the other hand, we've known from episode 1 that he will take risks.
And also, this sort of highlights what you, and also I guess, have complained about 2 episodes in a row about Umika and the fishbowl. Of how they set her up to almost make a decision and she never really conclusively decides either way. Tsukasa pulls out the necklace, goes, I might be able to use this, but no, it's too dangerous. I'm not going to risk my life for that.
Yeah.
Kairi sees the necklace and goes, good, and then grabs it and puts it on.
Yeah, that was a purposeful decision, and there was actually a reason for her to make that decision, and, it doesn't feel like she's having agency taken away. It's that her personality is being cautious, and Kairi's is not. So that's there for a reason, and it feels good as a reason.
And it's also, she doesn't, write it off completely permanently. She just says, I need more information before I can do this, and Kairi does not.
Yeah. But I think it also is really interesting how they do have such similar backstories, but, there's still that very clear difference in how the Pat Rangers and Lupin Rangers operate, because Tsukasa still has her family, and her drive is that she wants to be safe so she can go back to her grandpa. Meanwhile, Kairi has lost his brother and will do anything to get him back, even if it means dying.
And here's another thing that may have led to Kairi's mini breakdown on the bridge. Was it a bridge? I think it was just...
It's just out at the bay or whatever.
An outcropping or whatever. But Tsukasa's grandfather is way worse than Kairi's brother, but Tsukasa was able to reconcile with him and look past the things about him that upset her.
Yeah.
Kairi was not able to reconcile with his brother, who is infinitely easier to reconcile with.
Yep. And
I'm sure he was just kicking himself in the back of the head that whole story.
Yep. And now he really can't reconcile with his brother until he kills every ganglar and gets all the treasures. Technically, Tsukasa could go back home anytime she wanted to. She just has more stuff to do, and she's willing to do it.
Yeah, and we don't really know how often she sees her grandfather. There's no reason to think it's not every day.
Yep.
I think they mentioned that, like, the global police put her up in an apartment, so she might live on her own now, but still.
Yeah, she can quit anytime she wants to. She has an out.
Yeah. And it's interesting just how often, I can't remember where I read this, but it was some article of, like, compiling all of the common traits of, like, poorly written fanfic characters. And one of the ones they came up is their, like, flaw is always that they're stubborn. And that flaw never actually creates problems for them.
Yeah.
Kairi, very good example of how that flaw can create gigantic problems.
So many problems.
Stubborn probably isn't the right thing, but it goes hand in hand with not bullheaded, refuses to think things through and just sort of does things.
Yeah.
It's weird because the words to describe Kairi and Keiichiro's flaws are fairly similar, but seeing them in action, it's actually really different.
Oh yeah, way different.
Because Keiichiro, like, is always constantly aware of what he's doing, doubling down. And Kairi, you know he's aware, but it doesn't always seem that way. When he's, like, styling and shooting the gun behind his back, it's like, Kairi!
Kairi, please.
You're about to die! Please acknowledge that you're about to die.
But yeah, I really do appreciate that this episode points that out, that, like, the Pat Rangers are all pretty much in this because they want to be, and they were pretty much all inspired by cops before them. Like, Keiichiro had that one, person he didn't know personally, but still inspired him. And Tsukasa has her grandpa, who eventually inspired her and trained her, even if she maybe didn't always want that. And then, of course, with Sakia, it's the people he idolized ended up becoming his friends, and he wants to be his best for them. But then you just have the Lupin Rangers, who are in this because they have to.
Right. That's actually one of the things that one of the criticisms of this show that I feel like I actively vehemently disagree with is a lot of people say that the Pat Rangers do not have a personal stake in the conflict.
Yeah,
the Lupin Rangers have their loved ones, the Pat Rangers don't. And of all the, like, that's the fucking point comments I've ever made.
Yeah, they don't have a personal stake because, that's their job. But they take their job seriously. They want to make the world a better place.
And they do have, like, a personal stake in their jobs, but not in the conflict.
Yeah.
It's one of those things of, like, so because Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events got a Netflix series somewhat recently, a lot of adults that I know went back to read the books, and a lot of them complain about how Daniel Handler will stop to explain the meaning of words every page. But that's a joke.
Yeah, that's the humor.
Definitions are wrong, or, like, at least not useful.
They're just like little humorous bits.
It's like, not only is that the point that's not even really true. Like, he's not stopping because kids won't know what this word means. He's stopping because kids do know what this word means, but he's pretending that they don't for a joke.
Yeah,
you're trying to tell me you're too smart for this book, but you don't get it.
Yeah, this kid's book has a lot of fun with, like, phrases and words and stuff, so you have, like, skits isn't the right word for a book, but, like, it's that sort of thing where he takes digressions. It takes you out of it and sort of gives, like, examples of literal that are goofy. And then you'll also have characters in later pages, use or misuse the same sort of phrase. It's called being playful, you jerks.
My favorite example is spending a page explaining what deja vu is and then printing the same
page.
Yes,
he found himself reading the same words over and over again.
Oh, I wasn't even talking about that. I was talking about the carnival one, where he explains what deja vu is at the beginning of a chapter, and then you turn the page and it's still the beginning of the chapter.
God, I do not remember the carnival one that well, but the first book, where he just finds himself reading the same sentence over and over again.
And then 3 chapters later, you turn the page and it's the beginning of that deja vu chapter again. But yeah, the Power Rangers do have personal stakes in the conflict. They don't have personal stakes in the Ganglar specifically, but they are trying to protect the world.
Yeah, like, just because it's not like a solid thing that is personal to them doesn't mean that they can't just be good people who want to help everyone.
It's why, like, in every version of Batman that tackles the person that killed his parents, except the Tim Burton movie, Batman's not out for blood. Because he's not about that.
Yep.
It's not about the personal things that happened to him and him getting revenge. He's trying to prevent it from happening to anyone else.
Yep.
Power Rangers are trying to create a peaceful world. They're cops, so they're already making mistakes, but still.
It's fantasy cops, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like what our friend Jenner says, why do you need to have a character get kidnapped for a character to want to save the world?
Yeah, shouldn't they just want to save the world? I don't even remember what she was talking about.
I feel like she didn't have a specific example, but just the general idea of we have this huge conflict that a character, if they have the ability to stop it, should absolutely want to stop it. You don't need to add in, oh, by the way, their girlfriend got kidnapped by dark evil lord man.
Yeah, God. It's super obnoxious to me because the internet always complains about, like, Hollywood producers dumbing down ideas. But then I go on Tumblr and I see those same internet people making the same bad decisions that a Hollywood producer would make.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mad. I don't want to be the person who's mad about a kids show, but especially people watching the kids show and having wrong opinions on it. I'm being facetious when I say wrong opinions. But, like, having ideas about it that are just really strike me as weird. And not just that I disagree with them, but also, like, really? But anyways, that's enough of me yelling at a fan base who's not watching our videos. So, if you don't have anything else to say about the episode, we can move on to predictions.
I don't have too many predictions, which is probably...
Predictions. Lyman will still be big.
Yes. The next episode looks wild, but that's not a prediction. I just watched the preview. It's probably good that I don't have any predictions because we've taken so many detours this episad. Like, God. But anyways.
That is it for this episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at LRVSPR. Fefner is at Fefner Masamune. You can email us at LupinRecap versus PatReview@gmail.com. And we will see you in the next episode.
Adieu.